A woman must understand that her emotional energy is one of the most valuable assets she possesses. Many people protect their money, their reputation, and their opportunities, but they fail to protect their peace. Yet peace is the foundation that allows every other part of life to function properly. Without peace, the mind becomes confused. Without peace, judgment becomes emotional. Without peace, relationships become exhausting and purpose becomes difficult to pursue. This is why silence is powerful. Silence protects a woman from unnecessary emotional battles that drain her spirit and weaken her focus. There are people in this world who survive on emotional chaos. They provoke arguments, create confusion, spread negativity, and constantly pull others into drama because disorder gives them a sense of control. A woman who reacts to everything becomes emotionally available to everyone. Every insult affects her. Every criticism controls her mood. Every misunderstanding steals her focus. Over time, this becomes dangerous because emotional exhaustion slowly destroys confidence, clarity, and strength. But silence changes the entire situation. Silence allows a woman to step back instead of reacting immediately. It creates space between emotion and response. That space is where wisdom is born. Many regrets in life are not created because people lacked intelligence. They are created because people reacted emotionally before thinking clearly. A woman who masters silence protects herself from decisions that are driven by temporary feelings. Not every opinion deserves her attention. Not every insult deserves her response. Not every conflict deserves her participation. One of the greatest signs of maturity is realizing that some battles are distractions disguised as importance. People who are committed to misunderstanding a woman will often continue misunderstanding her no matter how much she explains herself. Endless explanations can become emotional slavery because she begins wasting energy trying to earn validation from people who have already decided not to value her. Silence teaches a woman how to detach from unnecessary emotional pressure. Detachment is not coldness, it is wisdom. It is understanding that protecting inner peace is more important than winning every argument. Some women lose themselves because they spend years trying to fix toxic people, convince stubborn people, or heal broken people who refuse to change. In the process, they neglect their own emotional health. But silence becomes protection. It says, "I will no longer sacrifice my peace to rescue people who enjoy dysfunction." A peaceful woman becomes stronger mentally. Her emotions no longer control her decisions. She begins thinking clearly instead of reacting impulsively. She learns how to remain calm even when others are trying to provoke her. This kind of emotional discipline is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. Anyone can react emotionally. Anyone can scream when angry. Anyone can lose control under pressure. But it takes strength to remain composed when chaos surrounds you. Silence also prevents manipulation. Manipulative people study emotional reactions. They learn what triggers anger, fear, guilt, or insecurity. Then they use those emotional weaknesses for control. But when a woman becomes emotionally disciplined, manipulators become frustrated because they can no longer predict or control her reactions. Silence denies toxic people the emotional access they desire. There is another powerful truth about silence. It gives a woman time to heal. Constant noise prevents reflection. Constant emotional conflict keeps wounds open. Some women remain emotionally broken because they never allow themselves quiet moments to recover mentally and spiritually. Silence creates an environment where healing can begin. In silence, she can reflect on her mistakes without shame. In silence, she can rebuild her confidence. In silence, she can reconnect with her purpose instead of being consumed by people's expectations. A woman who constantly reacts emotionally becomes mentally tired. Her energy becomes scattered in too many directions. But silence helps her conserve emotional strength for what truly matters. Instead of fighting unnecessary battles, she focuses on growth. Instead of defending herself endlessly, she works on becoming stronger. Instead of chasing validation, she develops self-respect. Peace is not weakness. Peace is power under control. Some people think a calm woman is weak because she does not constantly react, but calmness is often a sign of inner strength. A woman who has mastered peace understands that emotional control is greater than emotional outbursts. She no longer feels the need to prove herself through noise because she has already discovered her value internally. The world will always contain negativity, criticism, and conflict. But a wise woman learns that she does not have to carry every burden placed before her. She does not have to absorb every negative word spoken about her. She does not have to attend every emotional war she is invited into. Silence becomes her filter. It protects her heart, guards her mind, and preserves her energy. And once a woman truly learns how to protect her peace, everything about her changes. Her thinking becomes clearer. Her confidence becomes stronger. Her decisions become wiser. Her presence becomes calmer. People begin noticing a different level of maturity within her. Why? Because emotional peace creates stability, and stability creates power. A woman who has peace cannot easily be controlled by fear, pressure, manipulation, or public opinion. She becomes emotionally free. That is why silence is one of the greatest powers a woman can possess. It protects the one thing that determines the quality of her entire life, her inner peace. One of the greatest qualities a woman can develop is self-control, because self-control is the foundation of wisdom. A woman who cannot control her emotions will eventually allow her emotions to control her decisions. And whenever emotions become rulers instead of servants, destruction follows. This is why silence is so powerful. Silence creates space between emotion and reaction. It allows a woman to think before she speaks, observe before she responds, and understand before she acts. That space is where wisdom is born. Many people believe wisdom comes only from knowledge, education, or experience, but true wisdom is revealed through restraint. It is easy to speak when angry. It is easy to react when offended. It is easy to explode when hurt. But it takes strength to remain calm when emotions are demanding expression. A woman who masters silence is a woman who has begun mastering herself. She understands that not every feeling deserves a voice, and not every situation deserves access to her peace. There are moments in life when words spoken in anger can destroy relationships, opportunities, and even destinies. One emotional conversation can leave wounds that last for years. One uncontrolled reaction can close doors that may never open again. This is why silence is not weakness. Silence is protection. Silence protects a woman from becoming a prisoner of temporary emotions. Feelings change quickly, but consequences can remain for a lifetime. Wisdom teaches a woman to pause before reacting. When emotions rise, silence gives the mind time to regain authority. It allows logic to stand above emotional chaos. A wise woman understands that the loudest emotion in the moment is not always the truest voice. Anger can exaggerate problems. Fear can create false conclusions. Hurt can produce unnecessary conflict. But silence slows everything down. It creates room for clarity. A woman who practices silence becomes more observant. Instead of immediately reacting, she begins studying people carefully. She notices patterns in behavior, hidden motives, and emotional manipulation. Many people expose themselves simply because someone remained quiet long enough to watch them. Sometimes silence reveals more truth than 1,000 conversations. When a woman stops interrupting people with emotional reactions, she begins hearing what others are truly saying, not only with their words, but with their actions. This level of wisdom changes relationships completely. A woman who lacks self-control can easily become trapped in cycles of drama, arguments, and emotional exhaustion. Every insult becomes a battle. Every disagreement becomes a war. Every misunderstanding becomes a crisis. But a wise woman understands that peace is more valuable than always being right. She no longer wastes energy trying to win arguments that do not improve her life. There is great power in emotional discipline. Emotional discipline does not mean suppressing feelings or pretending pain does not exist. It means refusing to allow emotions to become dictators. It means learning how to feel deeply without reacting foolishly. A woman with self-control can be angry without becoming destructive. She can be hurt without becoming bitter. She can be disappointed without losing dignity. That is maturity. Many people lose respect because they speak too quickly. They reveal every emotion instantly. They react before understanding the full situation. But silence teaches patience, and patience increases wisdom. When a woman becomes patient, she stops making impulsive decisions. She stops allowing pressure to force her into unnecessary reactions. She begins operating from understanding instead of emotional survival. Silence also strengthens confidence. Insecurity often talks too much because it constantly seeks validation. A woman who is insecure feels the need to explain herself to everyone, defend herself constantly, and prove her worth in every conversation. But a wise woman understands that value does not need endless advertisement. She knows who she is, and because of that, she does not feel pressured to respond to every opinion people have about her. There is something powerful about a woman who remains calm while others lose control. Her silence communicates strength. It shows that her emotions are disciplined, her mind is focused, and her spirit is grounded. Calmness in difficult situations is a sign of internal authority. Anyone can react emotionally, but not everyone can remain composed under pressure. Self-control also protects a woman from manipulation. Manipulative people often depend on emotional reactions. They provoke, criticize, accuse, and insult because they want control over someone's emotions. The moment they can control emotions, they can influence decisions. But silence interrupts manipulation. When a woman refuses to react impulsively, manipulators lose their advantage. Her silence becomes a shield that protects her mind and emotions from toxic influence. A wise woman understands that silence is not about avoiding truth. It is about choosing the right moment, the right words, and the right spirit. Timing matters. Tone matters. Wisdom matters. Some conversations require silence before they require speech. Sometimes the greatest response is not immediate reaction, but thoughtful reflection. The woman who learns silence develops inner strength that many people never achieve. She becomes harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, and harder to control. She no longer gives people free access to her emotions. Instead, she becomes intentional with her words, intentional with her reactions, and intentional with her energy. And that is true power, not the power to dominate others, but the power to govern yourself. Because the woman who has mastered herself has already won half the battles life will ever bring. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that truth must always be defended through endless talking. They think if they explain enough, argue enough, or repeat themselves enough, people will finally understand them. But wisdom teaches something different. Truth has a strange power. It eventually reveals itself without struggle. And this is why a woman's silence can become one of the most powerful forces in her life. Silence has the ability to expose reality in ways arguments never can. Many women spend years trying to prove their innocence to people who already decided to misunderstand them. They exhaust themselves explaining their intentions, defending their character, and trying to correct every false narrative. But the painful truth is this: some people do not misunderstand you because they are confused. They misunderstand you because it benefits them. They twist your words because manipulation needs confusion to survive. And the moment a woman understands this, she stops wasting energy trying to force clarity into hearts committed to deception. Silence becomes powerful because it removes fuel from manipulation. Toxic people survive on reactions. They provoke emotions so they can control situations. They want anger because anger creates distraction. They want emotional outbursts because emotional chaos hides truth. But when a woman refuses to react emotionally, something incredible happens. The mask begins to fall. The manipulator becomes exposed by their own behavior. Have you noticed that dishonest people often become uncomfortable around calm individuals? That is because calmness removes their ability to create confusion. A manipulative person expects emotional reactions. They expect screaming, defending, begging, and chasing. But silence disrupts their strategy. It forces their behavior into the open where everyone can finally see it clearly. There is a deep wisdom in restraint. Restraint is not weakness. It is controlled power. Anybody can react emotionally. Anybody can lose control in anger. But it takes maturity to remain composed when emotions are being tested. A woman who masters silence develops emotional discipline, and emotional discipline protects her dignity. Too many women lose their power because they react too quickly. They speak from wounded emotions instead of healed wisdom. Pain pushes people to defend themselves immediately. But silence creates space for perspective. It gives truth time to breathe. It allows emotions to settle so wisdom can lead instead of frustration. Sometimes silence is necessary because not every person deserves access to your explanations. Some people ask questions not because they seek understanding, but because they seek control. They want to pull you into endless emotional conversations where you constantly feel pressured to justify yourself. But a wise woman understands that her value does not decrease simply because someone refuses to recognize it. Silence also reveals character. When a woman stops interrupting people with defensive reactions, she begins to observe who they truly are. She notices inconsistencies. She notices hidden motives. She notices who only contacts her when they need something. She notices who respects her boundaries and who becomes angry when they cannot control her. Observation becomes easier in silence because silence sharpens awareness. A woman who constantly talks may miss important truths because noise distracts her discernment. But silence allows discernment to grow. It allows her spirit to recognize danger before damage occurs. Many people reveal themselves naturally if given enough time. Liars eventually contradict themselves. Manipulators eventually expose their intentions. Fake people eventually become exhausted, pretending to be genuine. Silence gives truth room to uncover itself naturally. There is also strength in refusing to participate in unnecessary battles. Some arguments are designed only to drain peace. Some conversations are traps created to provoke emotional instability. A wise woman understands that winning an argument is meaningless if she loses her peace in the process. Silence becomes protection. It preserves emotional energy for things that truly matter. The world often confuses loudness with strength, but true strength is found in self-control. A woman who can remain calm when falsely accused demonstrates greater power than someone who collapses emotionally under pressure. Silence shows confidence. It communicates security within oneself. It says, I do not need to fight desperately for validation because I already know who I am. This is why silence unsettles insecure people. Insecure people depend on reactions to feel powerful. They need access to emotions in order to maintain influence. But when a woman becomes silent, they lose access to her emotional world. And the moment someone loses emotional control over you, they begin losing influence over your life. Silence is not about weakness, fear, or submission. It is about wisdom. It is about knowing that truth does not always need immediate defense because truth carries its own power. Time reveals reality. Character reveals reality. Consistency reveals reality. A woman who understands this stops exhausting herself trying to manage every opinion around her. She learns that peace is more valuable than proving a point to people committed to misunderstanding her. She learns that dignity is preserved through self-control. She learns that silence can speak louder than anger ever could. And most importantly, she learns that when she stops fighting to expose every lie, truth eventually exposes lies on its own. A woman must understand that value is not created by noise. Value is created by presence, wisdom, discipline, and self-respect. The world often teaches people that the loudest voice in the room is the most important voice, but true greatness has never depended on volume. Some of the most powerful people carry a quiet confidence that speaks before they ever open their mouths. In the same way, a woman who masters silence develops a presence that commands attention without demanding it. Many women lose their value because they feel pressured to constantly explain themselves. They explain why they made a decision, why they walked away, why they are hurt, why they changed, and why they refuse to tolerate disrespect. But the moment a woman feels the need to endlessly justify herself to people who have already decided not to understand her, she begins giving away emotional power. A woman who knows her worth understands that not every person deserves an explanation. Some people are committed to misunderstanding her no matter how clearly she speaks. Silence teaches a woman emotional discipline. Discipline is attractive because it reflects strength. Anybody can react emotionally in a moment of anger, frustration, or disappointment, but it takes maturity to remain calm when emotions are trying to take control. When a woman chooses silence instead of chaos, she reveals that she is emotionally grounded. She shows that her emotions serve her rather than control her. There is something deeply powerful about a woman who does not need to prove herself. She walks into a room without trying to compete for attention. She does not interrupt people to feel important. She does not constantly seek validation from others because she already understands her identity. Her confidence is internal, not dependent on applause. And because of this, people naturally become curious about her. Silence creates mystery, and mystery increases value. People often chase what they cannot fully access. When a woman reveals everything immediately, talks excessively, and exposes every emotion to everyone around her, people stop appreciating her depth. Familiarity without boundaries can cause people to take her presence for granted. But silence creates healthy distance. It teaches people that access to her thoughts, emotions, and personal life must be earned. A valuable woman understands privacy. She knows that not everybody deserves access to her pain, dreams, or struggles. Some people listen only to gossip later. Some people pretend to care while secretly waiting for an opportunity to use information against her. Silence protects her from unnecessary exposure. It protects her peace, her dignity, and sometimes even her future. This is why silence often intimidates insecure people. Insecure individuals feel comfortable when they can predict and control others. But a woman who has mastered silence becomes difficult to manipulate because she no longer reacts impulsively. She observes more than she speaks. She listens more than she explains. And because she listens carefully, she begins understanding people on a deeper level. She notices dishonesty, jealousy, insecurity, and manipulation that noisy emotions would normally overlook. A woman's silence also changes the way people respect her. When someone speaks constantly, their words can lose impact. But when a woman speaks with intention and wisdom, people begin paying attention. Her words carry weight because they are not wasted. She does not speak just to fill silence. She speaks to add value. This creates authority. Authority does not come from shouting. Authority comes from self-control. A queen does not need to announce that she is a queen every 5 minutes. Her presence speaks for her. In the same way, a woman with inner confidence does not chase attention because attention is not the same as respect. Many people receive attention while losing dignity at the same time, but silence protects dignity. There are women who become emotionally exhausted because they are constantly trying to convince people of their value. They try to prove they are good enough, loyal enough, attractive enough, intelligent enough, or worthy enough. But true value is never forced. The sun does not beg the world to notice its light. It simply shines. A woman must reach a point where she stops chasing acceptance from people who cannot recognize her worth. Silence also gives a woman the ability to remain unshaken during criticism. Not every negative opinion deserves emotional reaction. Some criticism is designed only to provoke insecurity. The moment a woman reacts emotionally to every insult, she gives strangers power over her peace. But when she remains calm and silent, she demonstrates emotional mastery. She shows that her confidence is rooted deeper than public opinion. One of the greatest forms of attractiveness is emotional stability. A woman who remains composed during pressure creates an atmosphere of strength around her. People trust calmness. People admire wisdom. People respect restraint. Silence becomes evidence that she is thinking before reacting, observing before speaking, and understanding before responding. And this is why silence increases value. It separates a woman from emotional chaos. It protects her dignity in difficult situations. It makes her words more meaningful. It creates mystery, wisdom, and self-respect. Most importantly, it teaches her that she does not need to fight for attention when she already carries greatness within herself. One of the greatest tragedies in life is that many people spend years surrounded by noise and never discover who they truly are. Noise is not only sound. Noise can be confusion, emotional drama, toxic relationships, endless opinions, social pressure, fear, insecurity, and constant distraction. A woman who is always surrounded by noise eventually loses connection with her inner wisdom. She begins to hear everybody else except herself. She hears critics, manipulators, doubters, and expectations from society, but she no longer hears the quiet voice of purpose within her. That is why silence becomes powerful. Silence creates the environment where clarity can finally speak. Many women are emotionally exhausted not because life is too hard, but because their minds never rest. Their emotions are constantly pulled in different directions. One person wants their attention, another wants their explanation, another wants their energy, and another wants control over their decisions. Eventually, the soul becomes tired. A tired soul cannot think clearly. A tired spirit struggles to recognize purpose. But silence becomes a form of restoration. Silence allows the mind to breathe again. There is something transformational about being alone with your thoughts. In silence, masks begin to fall. Distractions disappear. Truth becomes impossible to avoid. A woman begins to confront the parts of herself she ignored for years. She begins to recognize her fears, her strengths, her wounds, and her potential. Silence forces self-awareness, and self-awareness is necessary for growth. Many people avoid silence because silence exposes reality. When the music stops, when the crowd disappears, and when the phone becomes quiet, a person is finally left alone with themselves. That moment can either become terrifying or life-changing. A wise woman learns to embrace silence because she understands that clarity is born there. The greatest decisions in life are rarely made in emotional chaos. They are made in moments of reflection. Silence allows a woman to separate temporary emotions from permanent truth. Without silence, emotions can become dictators. Anger speaks loudly. Fear speaks loudly. Insecurity speaks loudly. But purpose usually whispers. Wisdom is quiet. Direction is quiet. That is why silence is necessary. It creates space for deeper understanding. Many women remain trapped in unhealthy environments because they never spend enough quiet time evaluating their lives honestly. Constant distraction prevents reflection. Some people keep themselves busy because they are afraid to confront reality. They fear admitting that certain relationships are draining them, certain habits are destroying them, or certain environments are limiting them. But silence removes distractions and reveals what truly matters. In silence, a woman begins to rediscover her identity beyond people's opinions. Society constantly tries to define women by appearance, relationships, status, or approval from others. But silence reconnects a woman to her true value. She begins to realize that her worth was never dependent on applause. She begins to understand that she does not need constant validation to be valuable. Confidence becomes internal instead of external. Silence also strengthens intuition. Every human being has an inner sense that warns, guides, and protects them, but many people ignore it because their lives are too noisy. A woman may sense dishonesty, manipulation, or danger, but constant emotional chaos can drown out that inner warning. Silence sharpens discernment. It allows intuition to become clearer. Suddenly, she begins noticing things she once ignored. She sees hidden motives. She recognizes unhealthy patterns. She stops confusing attention with love and manipulation with care. There is also healing in silence. Wounded people often try to heal through distraction, but distraction only delays healing. True healing requires reflection. A woman cannot heal while constantly running from herself. Silence creates the space where emotional wounds can finally be addressed instead of buried. In quiet moments, she begins processing pain honestly. She stops pretending everything is fine when it is not. She allows herself to grow through reflection instead of remaining trapped in denial. Some of the strongest women become powerful because silence taught them endurance. Silence taught them discipline. Silence taught them emotional control. They learned that every reaction is not necessary. They learned that peace is more valuable than proving a point. They learned that not every person deserves access to their energy. This wisdom transforms the way a woman lives. A woman who values silence also becomes more intentional with her life. She stops making decisions based only on emotion or pressure. She begins thinking deeply before acting. She understands that purpose requires focus and focus requires quietness. Great vision cannot grow in constant confusion. A distracted mind struggles to build a meaningful future. Silence also strengthens spiritual awareness. When life becomes quiet, deeper truths become easier to recognize. Gratitude becomes clearer. Purpose becomes clearer. Direction becomes clearer. A woman begins understanding that her life carries meaning beyond survival and approval. She begins seeing herself through the lens of purpose instead of insecurity. The world teaches people to fear silence, but silence is often where transformation begins. Seeds grow in hidden places. Strength develops in hidden places. Wisdom develops in hidden places. A woman who learns to sit in silence without fear becomes emotionally stronger because she no longer depends on constant noise for comfort. She becomes grounded within herself, and when a woman reaches that level of inner peace, she becomes difficult to manipulate. She no longer needs attention to feel important. She no longer needs endless approval to feel worthy. She no longer allows chaos to control her emotions. Silence has taught her who she is, what she deserves, and where she's going. That is why silence is not weakness. Silence is alignment. Silence is clarity. Silence is power. A woman must understand that one of the greatest battles she will ever fight is not physical, but emotional and psychological. There are people in this world who thrive on chaos. They survive by provoking reactions, creating confusion, and draining emotional energy from others. Toxic individuals know that if they can control a woman's emotions, they can influence her decisions, weaken her confidence, and slowly steal her peace. That is why silence becomes one of the most powerful weapons a woman can ever possess. Silence is not surrender. Silence is self-control. It is the ability to refuse participation in confusion. Many women lose their strength because they respond too quickly. They answer every insult, defend themselves against every accusation, and try to explain themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. But wisdom teaches a woman that not every attack deserves her attention. Some people are not looking for truth, they are looking for reaction. They want access to her emotions because emotional access gives them power. The moment she becomes angry, desperate, or emotionally unstable, they feel victorious. But when she remains silent, calm, and disciplined, their manipulation begins to fail. Silence frustrates toxic people because silence removes their control. Manipulators survive through emotional hooks. They throw criticism, guilt, shame, and disrespect like bait, hoping a woman will react emotionally. But silence cuts the rope. Silence says, "You no longer have permission to disturb my spirit." And there is nothing more powerful than a woman who can remain calm in the presence of chaos. A woman who has mastered silence understands that peace is more valuable than winning arguments. Some battles are designed to waste time, drain energy, and distract from purpose. Toxic people often create unnecessary drama because confusion keeps others emotionally dependent. But silence breaks the cycle. Instead of feeding the conflict, silence starves it. Instead of adding more emotional fire, silence removes oxygen from destruction. There are moments when silence speaks louder than words ever could. Silence communicates boundaries. Silence communicates dignity. Silence communicates emotional maturity. When a woman stops arguing with people who disrespect her, she sends a powerful message that her value is not dependent on their approval. She understands that constantly defending herself can become a form of emotional slavery. The need to always explain yourself often comes from insecurity. But a confident woman understands that people determined to misunderstand her will do so no matter how many explanations she gives. Silence also protects a woman from saying words she may later regret. Pain can make people reckless. Anger can make people destructive. Emotional reactions often create wounds that take years to heal. But silence gives wisdom time to arrive. It allows emotions to settle before decisions are made. A wise woman knows that temporary emotions should never control permanent consequences. Many people mistake silence for weakness because they do not understand discipline. Anybody can scream. Anybody can react. Anybody can lose control. But remaining calm when disrespected requires strength. Remaining composed when provoked requires maturity. A woman who controls her tongue controls her future. She understands that emotional discipline is one of the highest forms of power. Silence also exposes truth. Toxic people often reveal themselves when they are no longer receiving reactions. Some people continue provoking because they enjoy emotional control. But when a woman becomes silent, observant, and emotionally unavailable to manipulation, their true character begins to appear. Suddenly their anger increases. Their frustration becomes visible. Their desperation grows. Why? Because silence removes the emotional fuel they depended on. A woman must also understand that silence creates space for healing. Constant conflict exhausts the mind and damages the spirit. But silence allows reflection. It allows self-discovery. It allows emotional recovery. In silence, a woman reconnects with her identity instead of losing herself in the opinions of toxic people. She remembers her worth. She remembers her purpose. She remembers that her destiny is too valuable to be destroyed by emotional distractions. This does not mean a woman should never speak. There are moments when truth must be spoken boldly. There are moments when boundaries must be declared clearly. But powerful speech comes from wisdom, not emotional instability. A wise woman does not speak merely to release anger. She speaks with intention, clarity, and purpose. The most dangerous woman to toxic people is not the loud woman, but the peaceful woman. The woman who cannot be manipulated emotionally becomes impossible to control. When a woman no longer reacts to every insult, she becomes free. When she no longer needs validation from disrespectful people, she becomes strong. When she learns the power of silence, she stops wasting energy on battles that were never worthy of her spirit. Silence becomes her protection. Silence becomes her discipline. Silence becomes her weapon. And through that silence, she discovers a level of strength that toxic people can never destroy.